Ho'e ki pea moe kakai whanua. This is Pacific Mornings. I'm John Pulu. Now, each week we're joined by a Pacific Member of Parliament. And this morning, joining us right now is Labour MP Jenny Salesa. Jenny, malo e taulava and malo soifua.
Malo Lele, malo soi to everyone, and thanks for having me this morning, JP.
Malo pito, Jenny, for making time for us. There's a lot to talk about in this segment. And of course, the most obvious topic is Budget 2025. Your reaction?
Oh my goodness, yet again, this government continues, I think, to fail our Pacific people. Budget 2025 sees so many more cuts. If we're just to look at the Ministry of Pacific Peoples, it's been cut this year by nearly 36 million, but that's on top of the nearly 26 million that this national-led government made to Ministry of Pacific Peoples last year. And we're not even talking about all the cuts in health and education and social services. But I think the main message for this year's overall budget is actually how they're paying for some of the new initiatives that they've actually brought through. As you well know, John Pulu, because you would have followed it, we were all in a level of shock when the government actually announced that they're going to repeal, make a big, huge change to the pay equity legislation. And so, in opposition, we were wondering, how is the government going to make their budget balance? Where are they going to find the money from? And, we knew when they made that announcement that they were actually looking at women's pay. We knew at the budget just how much that actually overall is, which is $12.8 billion, money that was put aside that would affect a lot of our Pacific women. Women who work in nursing and teaching, women who work in aged care, women who are cleaners. And what the changes in legislation means is it is so much harder for our women to get to the starting line to even make a pay claim, because you actually they've increased the threshold from 60% to 70%. And so what that means for especially our teachers who are teaching in secondary schools is they actually can't make a pay claim under the new legislation in the future, because the numbers of women who make up teaching in secondary schools is only 63%. And so overall, this budget it tells us that, they just don't care enough about Pacific people. Things that they've cut, including the Dawn Raids funding. It was a big thing that for Dawn Raids, we made the apology and we put some funding aside because so many of our people are still traumatized by it. They've even cut that, which we just think is shameful.
Now, you've addressed some of the other issues, but if I can take us back to the Ministry for Pacific Peoples, how concerned are you about the funding cuts to Pacific-focused initiatives? If you don't mind going back to MPP's changes, Jenny.
It's hugely concerning to us, because the other thing is the huge cuts, right, in terms of funding. But if you were to look at what the government did as well, it came through when it came through to government. The Minister of Finance made a statement that for all government departments, she expects them to cut by between 6.5% to 7.5%, right? But the ministry that was cut the most in terms of the staff was Ministry of Pacific Peoples. 40% of the staffing was cut. And so the overall concern for us in opposition is, we heard this is actually going to be our Deputy Prime Minister soon, right? He steps up as Deputy Prime Minister in a few days, actually, the Honourable David Seymour. He made a statement. The policy of ACT is actually to get rid of all population ministries, right? But you would remember he also made, and he said it was a joke, but it's not a joke to us, that, perhaps there should be Guy Fawkes set to the Ministry of Pacific Peoples. And so for us, we're really concerned that this is kind of the national-led government taking steps in terms of cuts, but that they might, worst case scenario, get rid of Ministry of Pacific Peoples in the future, and they are important because they are the voice of Pacific in government. Yes, it's important to have members of parliament like myself and Honourable Carmel Sepuloni and all of our Pacific MPs, including, of course, who will be Minister of Finance, the Honourable Barbara Edmonds, when we get back into government. It's important to all of us to have all of us in opposition. But we also need a government agency because they are the ones that advocate on behalf of all of us with other government agencies. They are the ones that when, say, the Ministry of Education or the Ministry of Health or other government ministries write their budget bits or write their policies, they are the ones who are there to be our voice, to ensure that there is also the voice of Pacific being heard in government. And so when we see such huge cuts to the Ministry of Pacific Peoples and when we are worried that they are taking the steps to get rid of the Ministry of Pacific Peoples, I think we should all be worried because the population of Pacific in New Zealand has grown. We are, according to the 2023 census, we're at 450,000, a lot of us. And so as our population grows, our voice in government and in politics and in every facet of New Zealand, it should be equally as heard. And so it is a huge concern for us, the things that are happening to the Ministry of Pacific Peoples.
Now, it's not just cuts. There is a little boost here, Jenny. This is the government's commitments to $1 million over 4 years to support the Pacific Wardens. Do you think this goes far enough to support our community?
Our Pacific Wardens do a lot of good work in the community, and I'm glad that they are getting a little boost to the work that they do. But JP, this is $250,000 a year, right? Because it's $1 million, but it's $1 million over 4 years. Does that actually justify the $62 million that's been cut over the last couple of years to the Ministry of Pacific People? Does it justify all of the other cuts and all of the other sectors? Does it justify the fact that our Pacific women who work very, very hard, some of our Pacific women work 2 jobs, does it justify the fact that for pay equity, this government has taken away $12.8 billion, which was put aside for pay equity claims in the future? Our women get paid 17% less compared to other women in the workforce. Does it justify that? I don't think so, JP. I don't think so.
Now, Jenny, as a former education minister, how do you rate the government's $7 million investment in a new homework and tutoring scheme for Pacific students, especially when compared to programs Labor previously funded?
I'm always hopeful in terms of education that the programs that whichever government comes in and introduces, I'm always hopeful that it works and it works well for our people. But as you know, we made a lot of investments in the education sector when we were in government over the 6 years. We had a lot of programs that were underway. We had, under Labor, launched our 10-year action plan for Pacific education to transform learning for our Pacific students. We ran initiatives like the Pacific Education Support Fund, Pacific Education Innovation Fund, to assist our learners and their families. We think that we had really good comprehensive education initiatives for Pacific people, and we had hoped that this government would continue those. However, as you see, there's been a lot of cuts in education overall. I do actually hope that this education initiative, I hope that they work for our students. But if I'm just to look at what happened over the 6 years we were in government, you would see just from how much we invested, that we invested a whole lot more than $7 million.
And speaking of investment, there's some changes to KiwiSaver. Both Labor and National came out with vastly different figures for what an 18-year-old would end up with when they retire.
Yes, and I don't think it's actually overall such a good thing. We're wanting our young people when they're young, 18 years old, to be attracted to signing up to the KiwiSaver program because, we don't have such a good retirement initiative. KiwiSaver is really good, but we don't. It's not compulsory, and so having an incentive where the government actually says to the young person, sign up for KiwiSaver and we will contribute this much, is actually a good way of attracting our young people to start young, right, and to start saving for when they retire. But this government, unfortunately, not only has taken pay equity funds for our women, they've also reduced the incentives for young people to start saving, and so that when they retire, they've actually got something to assist them in their retirement age. And we don't think it's right. We think actually reducing the age of who could actually get into the KiwiSaver scheme is good, but we think that reducing the overall amount of contribution of government is not good, because we're wanting to attract even more young people to think long term, think of their retirement from such a young age. And we know research tells us that if you begin saving when you're younger, you will actually continue to do that well into your retirement age. And so we don't agree with the government's reduction in the KiwiSaver contribution.
I'm just mindful of our time, Whamolemole. Jenny, as the MP for Pēmua o Tāhuhu, do you think the Budget 2025 reflects a genuine understanding of the needs of South Auckland, where you reside and where your community is, and its Pacific population?
No, it does not. And one of the things that I can point to is in terms of the investment in health. Miramore Hospital is in my electorate of Pēmua o Tāhuhu. This government has made some investments in health, but it's actually not enough to ensure that we have not only good health facilities, but actually to ensure accessibility, and to ensure that the health services are affordable, especially for our people in South Auckland. And so, no, I don't think that they're investing quite enough. The other thing, of course, that this government has done, not just in this budget, but also just as they came in a year and a half ago, is when they cut those services to public services, that was one thing. But when they chose deliberately to pause things like, building some classrooms, building roads, renewing things over in hospitals, it actually had a really chilling effect on the building and construction sector. We know that since this government came in to power, there's been just over 15,000 jobs lost to the building and construction sector. And you would know, because we have lots of relatives Pacific who work in the sector, that this also affects our people. And so budgets is about choices. And this government has not made the right choices. And we see the effects of that, not just in public service jobs, but in private jobs like building and construction, which has affected our community even more. We know unemployment rate is rising, and it continues to rise, and unfortunately that also affects our Pacific people. And so I wish that the news was more positive in terms of the budget, but it's not as positive, not for Pēmua o Tāhuhu.
Jenny, lots to talk about, but we'll have to leave it there for now. Malo, au pito e mautwhanga mai ria I he pongpongeni. All the very best. Have a wonderful day.
Malo Peter JP.